Hello, welcome to Movement Building from Home, Week 4. I'm your co-host, Chad from Mozilla, joined here by Abby. And we have been convening these calls in response to the COVID-19 crisis so that we can help bring people together for some peer-to-peer learning about sustaining our activism and our movement building in these uncertain times. In past weeks, calls have focused on running online meetings. That was week 1. Community care, that was week 2. Personal ecology or self-care or well-being, that was week 3. And this week, week 4, the final call in the series, we'll be talking about online community management. I'm also going to take us through our weekly community participation guidelines reminder, and then we'll get started on the goals of the call. But we are here, of course, to be respectful, honest, inclusive, accommodating, appreciative, and open to learning from everyone else in the community. And we do not attack, demean, disrupt, harass, threaten others, or encourage any such behavior. If you'd like to see a fuller version of these community participation guidelines from Mozilla, you can do so near line 70, about the bottom third of page 2. And if there's an issue you'd like to report or something CPG related you would like to discuss, you can reach out to Abby or me, and our emails are provided there. But now, let's get started with online community management and the goals of the call from Abby.
Cool, thanks, Chad. So 3 goals for the call. First, we're gonna touch a little bit on crisis communication, especially during COVID-19, messaging for that. We'll be introducing the mountain of engagement as a framework to identify engagement pathways in your online work. And then we'll learn about strategies and platforms for adapting in-person community management practices for online participation. And to help us with platforms and a bit of a case study with what they're doing, we have Emma Irwin from the community development team at Mozilla on the call. So hi, Emma. She waved if you missed that. Chad.
Yeah, to get things going, we're going to activate some of our prior background knowledge there, but also give us all a chance to share from our own experiences with our communities and the work that we're doing right now. So we're going to go down to section 4 near the bottom of page 2 for a bit of silent documenting. We'll do about 5 minutes of sharing in the document and 5 minutes of sharing out loud here in the call. We have 3 prompts today that you are invited to type in response to. You can, of course, share your thoughts out loud. We're happy to take notes. But here are the prompts. First, think of an online space where you felt really welcomed. What made it so welcoming, and what helped you stay engaged with that space? Prompt 1. Prompt 2 asks you, how are you onboarding new members right now, and then deepening community members' engagement over time with your work online? You know, what's working in onboarding and engagement? And then prompt 3 asks, what are your biggest community management challenges right now, and how are you trying to approach them? So prompt 1, tell us about a welcoming space you've been to and why it was so welcoming. Prompt 2, tell us how you're onboarding folks and keeping them engaged with your community. Prompt 3, share a bit about the challenges you're facing in community management. Any questions? All right, I'm gonna put the timer on for 5, and then we'll come back together. And remember, as you finish, +1 to affirm things that seem powerful to you that others have shared. And feel free to ask some of those kind questions to help people unpack their thinking. All right, plenty of typing still going on. We're about halfway through, friends. Again, if you have kind of wrapped up your initial share, you've gotten your thoughts down, please go ahead and scan through the other responses, plus one of the things that seem powerful to you, and ask any questions that you have. A little bit under a minute left. If you have a chance to take a look at some of other folks' responses and plus one things, that's great if you've wrapped up your typing. If not, please go ahead and keep working to complete your thoughts. All right, that's our time there. All kinds of great plus oneing going on here. Is there anything anyone would like to bring up from any of these prompts to kind of start some discussion here? So a lot of plus ones, for example, around having a kind sense of humor or a bit of playfulness. Coloring with Zoom annotation. That's cool. I haven't tried that yet. Does anybody want to say more about that?
I was the one that put the coloring. This is Erin. I was in a group on liberating structures or liberated structures, and they did this, and it was just, and they also had this sense of humor, and it was a group that I was brand new to, and it was just a nice way to kind of put people at ease and also help them learn to use some of these tech tools that were, I mean, I feel like I've been on a zillion Zooms, but I hadn't co-annotated something on a Zoom, so it was interesting and fun.
Oh, that's super interesting. So like it was the blank picture and then everyone used the annotation feature and colored.
Yeah. It was like, they were sharing a coloring book page and then we were all coloring on top of it.
It's a really fun idea. Thanks for sharing that, Erin.
Very cool. I noticed in this section and the one below, lots of approaches or lots of appreciation for kind of like one-to-one contact or reaching out maybe with a specific invite. That's Sleepy the dog, everybody who doesn't like delivery people, unfortunately. But does anybody want to speak to any of those experiences while I mute here for a second? Either approaches you've taken to kind of like shoulder tap and invite people in individually, or invitations you've received.
Did everyone get that?
Feel free to rephrase, Abby.
Yeah, does anyone want to talk about how to do these one-to-one relationships in an online setting now? Or things you've tried?
We have sort of a set of super community members just by the nature of their roles. And I don't do it for everyone, but for them, I really try and actually make a phone call.
Yeah.
And it makes a huge difference.
Yeah. I think like identifying those super community members or the people who it makes sense to invest that much time in. Smart.
And my current challenge is Sleepy the dog, but moving on to challenges with the few moments we have left in this section. I see Zoom burnout coming up, but also like needs for clarity around communications, but also around asks. Anybody who put down things like that, is there anything you want to share?
Yeah, I put the one about how to communicate clearly if I don't know by myself what's happening or how things are evolving. And like I'm about, or I was about to organize a virtual conference, and for 2 months now, and now basically today it was stopped the planning because leadership doesn't want it anymore. But and so over the last 2 months, people were constantly asking me like, when is this happening? What's and so for me, it was really difficult to say clear dates, and so because everything was constantly evolving, and that was a big challenge for me.
Yeah, and it reminds me of our last week's discussion on personal ecology, where so many people said like uncertainty is something that leaves them off balance or causes them stress. So not being able to provide that clarity to your community, it's difficult.
And I understand that I'm feeling like as a community member as well, it would be hard for me not to get any clarity. But if leadership doesn't provide clarity, well, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, I think a lot of us are struggling through that right now.
Yeah, very much heard and felt. That was also a really great segue into talking about practicing community management online. So we'll turn things over to Abby here to continue the conversation that we're all engaged in here around clarity of communications and clarity of asks and participation right now and how important they are.
Cool.
Abby.
Thanks, Chad. Yeah, so in this section, there's 3 parts. We're going to talk a little bit about messaging, then the mountain of engagement, like I said before, and then Emma's going to share a little bit at the end. So first, really quick on messaging during a crisis. I do like this quote from Napoleon that a leader's job is to paint reality and give hope. So don't be honest. Don't try to have this naive hope that you're casting on people, but be realistic. So if there's a way that you can share facts, so be factual about everything that's going on and be honest with what's going on, but offer hope. So offer a reason why it's still important to be doing this work or why it's still important to be connecting with the people in your community. And then I think most importantly, have empathy. I know a lot of us are getting emails with the same opening line with like, I hope you're well, I hope stay safe. And I think that's important. The repetition's okay in this case. And really be understanding when community members have to drop out or are busy doing other things. There's a lot going on. So really be empathetic. So I hope these 3 points really help you as you think through how you're messaging the work you're doing and keeping centered in why it's important during this time. I do want to spend most of this talking about the mountain of engagement. There is a link with slides if you want to follow along. If you're a visual learner, it is just a triangle. So you can just imagine that with things going up a mountain. But I'll be walking through here in the notes, and I'll be telling you which slide to go through as we go on. And okay, so the big idea, which is slide 2, is that a sustainable community needs 2 things. First are newcomers coming into the community. And the second is a way for existing members to level up within the community. If you're missing either one of those, over time, you won't have leaders ready to lead that community. So you constantly need to be replacing those leaders and like bringing new people in. So we're talking about pathways to help bring people both into that community and then keep going up. So if you go to slide 3, the levels in the mountain, we have 6 levels there. So first is discovery. How do they first hear about your group or your movement? This could be, on Twitter or somewhere else. First contact, how they first engage with you. They might join your mailing list. They might say hi in Slack. Participation, how they first participate with your community. So they might come to a webinar. They might start discussing on your mailing list. Sustained participation. Maybe they keep coming to a few webinars. They keep sending you pull requests if it's an open source project. Networked participation, which I think is really important. That's the point when they start inviting others into the community, or they start helping others sort of move up that mountain. And then finally, leadership. And this could mean like as much as leading the entire program or project, or maybe they're just helping facilitate one session. So leadership can mean a lot of different things, and you can keep moving people up within leadership. But we'll focus on these first 6 steps. So the next set of slides is just best practices for an online setting, how to get people to that next step. So in slide 4, so how do you get people from not hearing about your project or your program to hearing about it, discovering it? And really a lot of that's promotion, which is, it depends on your project, whether it makes sense to do this on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, social media, email lists. There's a lot of ways you can promote it, and it's different for each community. That's up to you. But a couple other best practices is to make sure there's a public space for this. This might be a public repository if it's an open source project, maybe a website where everyone can see what's going on, just some place where they can find it online. And then also having it openly licensed. That way people know that they have permission to sort of see what you have and share it and use it. So that helps with promotion, I think. Next slide. So now that they've discovered it, how do they contact you? And I think that's where having a very clear mission and vision makes a big difference. If someone comes to your website, they don't understand what it is they're trying to do, they're gonna be a lot less likely to actually contact you or reach out. So make sure you understand what it is you're doing and make that really clear when they first get to your website or GitHub. I think also having multiple communication channels is really helpful for people contacting you. If the only way people can contact you is by emailing, that is quite a big barrier compared to maybe having like a mailing list they can sign up for, or having a Slack group or some sort of chat room they can go in and just lurk for a while, or like a Discord so they can go and sort of see how the community is interacting before they have to go and email you. So having a couple ways for them to communicate with you. And then similar to the mission vision, having like a README or landing page, just someplace clear that describes what you're doing, makes it better for people to contact you. Now to get from first contact to participation, next slide. I really like this from volunteerism research. If you give someone a personal invitation, they're 4 times more likely to volunteer than otherwise. So if there's someone in your community you think would be great to come to a webinar or help with something that you're doing, just ask them. That makes a really big difference. In open source, there's this idea of requests for contribution. So you're actually asking people to help, or asking people for their opinion. That can also work. It's not quite as personal, but it does still make a difference. And then on the flip side of inviting people is really setting those expectations. So what does it mean for them to participate? So having things like a code of conduct or contributing guidelines helps people understand like what it is you value and how people do interact in your community. If you can also put things like how many hours a week you're expecting from them, or even for these calls, we said it was 1 hour a week for 4 weeks. You have different choices of when you can join. You can skip weeks if you want. So we were really clear about that, and that made it easier for people to participate. Now that people have participated, how do you get to sustained participation? So how do you keep them coming back? And I do think recognition makes a big difference. So thanking people for what they've done, having those rituals of gratitude like Chad's been talking about in previous weeks, really even just putting people, like listing them as a contributor or like tweeting a little thanks to them, just doing something to really thank them goes a long way. I know sometimes it's some like handwritten notes. You don't all have to do that. It's a lot of work, but I really like making handwritten notes and people really enjoy that, and it helps people keep coming back. If you can connect what they're doing to the mission, that really helps keep people engaged. If they know that the work that they're contributing is helping your bigger vision. I know a lot of like political campaigns are really good at this, really saying like, oh, you canvassed this many houses, you helped us reach our goal of 1,000 for this neighborhood, really pointing to where you're helping with their bigger goals. And then also matching skills and interests. So make sure you are talking to the people in your community and asking them what they want to do, and then trying to fit them in a place that makes sense. And they'll be a lot more likely to stick around. That networked participation phase, this one's trickier. A couple ways you can get people to network participation. There's mentorship and training. So if you can provide a value to people where they feel like they are learning from this, they're getting some benefit from this, they will be much more likely to bring others into it. And what's interesting with a mentorship framework, if you're mentoring people within the community, then they're automatically that networked phase because they're bringing others from lower in that mountain up above. That makes sense. And then also like a chance for professional development. So you can, if you can offer something like a certificate or recommendations for people based on what they've done in your community, that goes a long way. People enjoy that. And then finally, leadership. Again, leadership could be a lot of things, but I do think it makes sense to have that personal invitation again to really show that, yeah, you care about this person and what you see in them and like what values you see in them makes sense as leadership within your community. Having those clear expectations again, really saying what it is they'll be doing. If you can, like this is how many hours a week for how long. I do think a value exchange, really making sure that you're not just getting free labor from a volunteer, but they're actually getting something out of being there. So making sure that the exchange is equitable. And then the last point that I have is about the inclusive leadership cycle, which Emma, who's talking next, worked on. And I do really like this cycle, just showing that you're not just asking someone to be a leader and just leaving them there, but really having this phase where you're onboarding them, supporting them, reviewing their work, and then even renewing that leadership. So it's not just assumed that they'll be there forever. But I think that's a great way to think about how you bring people at leadership spot in the mountain. So it's a super fast overview of the mountain of engagement. But I do want to make sure we have enough time to talk with Emma on her work.
Hey, hello everyone. I'm Emma Irwin. I live on Vancouver Island. I'm really super happy to be here today talking to you about community and listening. I was reading through all of your notes. So yeah, I'm going to share my screen.
Sorry, I have to give you permission. And if anyone has questions in the meantime, there you go. You can write them in the doc and we'll get to them in the Q&A section.
Cool. Can you see my screen? The slide screen, hopefully?
Yes. Yeah, we're good.
Okay. And just a disclaimer, I have children around. There could be like a sudden explosion or maybe not, but if you hear something, just that's my background noise. So yeah, so community management during COVID, this presentation, I'm just going to walk you through some of the things that we thought about, implemented, learned, and are continuing to learn as we support our community and engage our community. So, you know, as COVID sort of began rapidly changing the landscape of our community and how people work and what they care about, we decided to set some goals for engaging our community and supporting them through that. So we, I'm going to change my slide. So, and we set those goals under 2 areas, which is one under communication. So making sure that we're intentional about how our community connects with each other, connects with Mozilla. And then some goals around calls to action. So the ways that they can continue to be a participant at Mozilla, but in lightweight areas. So communication, sorry, child noises as I predicted. So really like we identified that we needed both synchronous, so things like chat, connection, banter, and asynchronous ways that people could connect because of different time zones. Our community is global. People have access to different types of technology, different families. So making sure that we had both of those was our first step. And the solutions that we came up with that exist in our community right now are for synchronous chat. We have Matrix and Riot, which is fairly new at Mozilla. We just moved over from IRC, which I'm not sure if that's something that any of your communities use, but it was highly technical. So this is like a very accessible and great new tool in our community. No, thank you. And then asynchronous. So we have a forum, a discourse forum, where we post updates and news and information. So those were the 2 ways we decided to communicate. Again, this is a bit of a screenshot of the tool of Matrix. There's lots of great channels on Matrix, so it's our central place where people talk anyways. And one of the things that we decided to do was to create a channel to talk about COVID and to help people who are starting to express like stress, anxiety, worries, to create a central place for them to communicate. And that was really, we saw a lot of participation in that, and also just bringing people together under like these different categories. Oops. And discourse, again, this is just like a screenshot of what discourse looks like. It's where we do a lot of informal talking, but also just being able to post updates. People know where to come for information, and they can also subscribe to specific topics and post their responses. So the calls to action, we really wanted to channel the energy. I mean, I think everyone felt that when things started changing rapidly, that you know, I need to help, I need to do something, you know, just sitting here and feeling like things are happening to me is like a terrible situation that we're in. And so we wanted to channel that energy in a positive way where people felt supported, but also that they were able to support the things that they cared about, specifically, you know, Mozilla and our mission. And people have lots more time, we found. Some people had lots more time. Also, their time was different. So figuring out how to create calls to action around that and helping people stay connected was our goals there. And one of the projects that we created to channel that energy and to help people with time was what we call the hunt from home. And it happened in 2 phases. The first phase basically asked people, you know, hey, what tools are you using? And does that work on Firefox? So that we could both like provide lightweight contributions, a way to contribute, but also like, you know, helped improve the tools so people's online experiences were better. And I was just checking just before this call, we had 269 replies, found out that people are using 104 different tools to connect during the COVID crisis. And I don't have the number of bugs here, but I thought that was pretty interesting when we're talking about tools and communication, that you know, 104 from 269 people probably represents like a bigger, interesting story about how we can meet people where they are as it goes on. What's worked? So, I mean, all of these tools helped make space. So I'd say that what worked is that we were able to create space for people to talk, especially from a global perspective and different time zones. We found what worked was creating lightweight ways anyone can participate. So even though people have more time, they might have more anxiety or they have children at home, just making that lightweight was definitely something that worked. And what we've learned, I think that this is the key thing, is that we're actually learning, and there's things we've learned. This is a continual process. I saw it in some of your comments. I saw around Zoom fatigue. So initially, our response was to make sure that everyone had access to Zoom rooms, but you know, and everyone was able to talk. But it's really evolving. Like Zoom fatigue shows that we're still not quite there, and that one tool that works in one moment might not work in the second. So like one of the things we're learning is that we need to keep learning. And we don't know what we don't know unless we talk to people. So just really like asking people, hey, how are you doing, before diving into anything more like project specific, is really like helping us understand how we can help, and making room for that humanness is super important. We've learned schedules are challenging, they change, they come with different like periods of spikes in energy or emotion. And just connecting people around shared challenges. So the campaign that we ran, having people, you know, like come together for something like that was really something that we learned people like to do and will continue to do. So that was really fast, and thanks for listening.
Huge thanks, Emma. And I really appreciate you doing this with the kids running around in the background.
Yeah, sorry. Well, I figure that it's a state everyone has a little bit of chaos. And so I've never been more comfortable with telling people I'm in chaos than I am now. So thanks for rolling with it with me.
Oh, that's great. There is a question already in the notes. I think this is a good one for Emma. But do you have any tips for changing platforms?
So are you talking specifically of like asynchronous or synchronous?
I'm not sure who wrote that.
So this is Erin. I wrote it.
Yeah.
You had mentioned that you had changed from IRC to, that was the one I was interested in.
Sure. That was like, it was definitely a process where consultation was key. And that so we initially sent out a blog post and posted on our discourse. So we used that discourse to say why we wanted to move from IRC to Matrix, and there's a list of bulleted items that were fairly well researched. Things like code of conduct enforcement is really hard. We're trying to keep people safe. This is like for non-technical folk. There's a whole list of things, and then we provided six solutions that we're going to look at to fix it. So we didn't try and say like, this is the tool we've selected for you. You will enjoy it. We made sure that people knew what the choices were, why we chose them, what our criteria for choice was, you know, like preferably open source, and that we can basically mitigate some of those problems from the other tool. And then we actually provided instances of all of those for people to test and give their feedback. So it was like very consultative phase. And again, got feedback. We ultimately selected one that met all of our criteria and had that good feedback, and then posted that to the community. It went very well because of the consultative. If we had just switched it, I don't think it would have gone as well, especially for kind of old school open source tech people who IRC is still like, they feel there's no need to ever change from that. So it went well for those folks too. So thanks for asking.
Yeah, I'll just second that. I've been really impressed with how that transition's gone over, Emma.
Yeah, yeah, it's nice when things go well.
Yeah.
I'm happy to talk about that.
There's another question from Kevin. I think this might be, I might answer this one. In your community, do you have any issues around formalization of the engagement methods, progression, and trying allowing for flexibility in those methods? And I will say for them, if we're talking about the mountain of engagement, I think it's okay for people to go up and down as it allows. And it's okay for people to step off the mountain for a bit and then come back in. I think that's what I really like about that inclusive leadership cycle, or just having really time-bound asks from people, just saying like, we need you for these 3 months, and then we'll renew again afterwards. Then it makes it easy for people to step away for a few months and then come back when it's time again. So yeah, creating these like time-bound specific things really helped move people around. I don't know if did that help, Kevin? Cool. And I don't know, Emma, if you have any thoughts on that.
Plus one in what you said, I would just say one thing that around inclusive leadership, I found that sometimes people were worried that if they went away, that they would lose their recognition in the project. And the language that we landed on was moving people to emeritus versus alumni, because it felt like something that they could still be proud of, that they were a contributor and not just somebody from the past. So I don't know if that is relevant or not, but.
Oh, that's really interesting. Well, I think with that time, if you have any more questions, please put them in the doc. And I know Chad and I at least will stick around and try to answer them asynchronously afterwards. But I think we should probably move on to the breakout section, Chad.
Awesome. All right, here we are. Our last breakout here, we'll repeat our usual asks that we really listen to each other and thank each other, share from our own experiences while avoiding judgment and staying away from trying to solutioneer everything. Use that common denominator of kindness. Remember, you only need to share what you're comfortable sharing. And should you need help, there'll be a button at the bottom. You can press it, and Abby or I will show up to help you however we can. This week, please, if you're with new friends, take a moment to introduce yourselves. And then here are our 3 prompts. The first, how could you apply something like the mountain of engagement in your community right now? Second, what new approaches to community management are you learning these days? And are some of them, like, can you already imagine how you're going to carry some of them forward with you past the immediate crisis? And then third, how are you planning to stay connected with new allies and new community members that you're meeting, for the first time online right now? So, can you think of ways you might apply the mountain of engagement? Can you think of ways to take the things you're learning now ahead with you? Are there things you'll definitely want to keep? And then again, finally, how are you planning to stay connected with all these new people you're connecting with online right now? Any questions about those prompts? All right, I'm going to pause the recording, and I believe Abby has the rooms ready to go for you.
Yes. Cool. Welcome back, everyone. So we are in section 8 of the agenda for some shared insights. What were your big takeaways from the breakout group? Or did any big questions come up in your group that you want to level up to the rest of us? So we'll take a few minutes to let you silently document anything that came up in your group. And feel free to +1 others and to ask some kind questions like before. I really like Jen's comment. You never know what skills will suddenly come in handy. Yes. Uh, before this pandemic, I had no idea that all these video calls, knowing how to do this well would be very valuable soon. And I really love this one, the big difference between can you help and can you help with this? Yeah, does anyone want to expand on that? Either who wrote that or was in that group?
This is Ryan. I wrote that down. We spent a little time in our group talking about that, how there's a lot of decision making that people have to do in all areas of their life right now, and asking them to like give a lot of thought to something just feels like a really heavy lift. And so if one thing that we have found in our outreach for different programs through Open News is it's been really nice to be able to say to somebody, this thing that you did is awesome. Can we help you share it? And like make it a really specific thing that is both, that both acknowledges and compliments the person's work that they've already done, and offers to help, and then also like does not ask them to spend a lot of time thinking about what or how. Like we are providing a pathway, and it's just and perfectly happy to hear like, I don't have time right now. That's a totally fine answer, but it's way easier to consider a very specific ask like that.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, thanks, Ryan. That was great insight. Ton of +1s now.
And in that same group, we also talked about carrying that forward, that it's become really necessary now that everybody's so cluttered and overwhelmed, but that it seems like a good practice to continue even if things do return to a slightly more normal situation.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I really like that. Anyone else want to verbalize something that came up? This last one, not the last one, but this one near the bottom has a lot of +1s. The pandemic has given permission impetus to try online engagement to people in orgs who may have been too skeptical before. Worries about technology, time, money have given away in some cases to a freer, what the hell, let's just do it. A lot of +1s there, for sure, I hear that. Cool. Well, with that, I think I'll pass it to Chad to close this off in the last few minutes.
All right, welcome to the week 4 closing circle, everyone. Our first reminder, as usual, is please take about 2 to 3 minutes, perhaps right after this call, to complete the survey. This will help us figure out what to carry forward from this series of calls into our next kind of opportunities for community programming. Also, it's your chance to let us know if you would be interested in a special bonus episode, like a behind-the-scenes look at some of the planning and the meta stuff about how we went about bringing this series together. And the survey lets you tell us if you'd be interested in such a thing and ask some questions that we could include in such a program. So please do visit there and fill it out. Shares and shout outs, great opportunity to lift up folks in your community who are making a difference for you and others right now. Request for peer assist, there's a great way maybe to stay connected going forward. Here and on Slack as well, you're looking for contributors, you're looking for thought partners, do you want to keep a movement building from home book club going? Perfect place to put that. Right below that, we have 5 ways to stay involved with Mozilla, whole bunch of resources. This week, I'm going to highlight media-based organizing and collective care newsletter sign up from Allied Media. Great newsletter, really, really clear, helpful sections. Pleasure activism, mutual aid, getting funding, giving funding, just a great subscription. I encourage folks to do that. Survey is going to close this out again, and I'm just going to say thank you. What a beautiful experience to be here with you all in this challenging time, and to know we're not alone in it together as we grapple with community management and care and all the forms those things take. Abby, any last words?
Just that it's been such a pleasure meeting with you all over the last 4 weeks and just learning from you all. It's been great to see so many people excited about, this community work online. So thanks, everyone. Please stay in touch and join the Slack where Chad and I are always there to respond.
Absolutely. I'm going to go ahead and stop the recording just after another thank you, and bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.